The Chaos Sorcerer Benny Bobo Chapter 6, The Soap Incident and the Long Journey. Benny woke in his rented room at the Sleeping Dragon with sunlight streaming through the window and a sense of cautious optimism filling his chest. He sat up, stretched his arms above his head, and rolled his shoulders. "Today," he announced to the empty room, "is the day when everything will be better. No more disasters, no more poisonings, just normal adventuring. I can do this." He swung his legs out of bed and immediately noticed something unpleasant. He smelled, not terribly, but definitely noticeable. 2 weeks of irregular bathing, sweating through quests, and general adventuring had left him with a distinct odor that was somewhere between athletic locker room and homeless person. Right, bath first. Fresh start requires fresh hygiene. The Sleeping Dragon, like most inns, had bathing facilities. Benny made his way downstairs and found the bathroom, a small chamber with a large wooden tub in the center. The water was hot, which was good. The water was also murky, which was bad. Very bad. Benny stared at the tub. There was a thin film on the surface of the water. A single rag hung on a hook nearby, looking like it had seen better days. Better years, actually. "Excuse me," Benny called to the innkeeper passing by. "This water, is it fresh?" "Fresh enough," Marta replied. "We change it every few days. Everyone uses the same bath, but the water's hot." "Everyone uses." Benny looked at the murky water again, imagining dozens of unwashed bodies soaking in it, the accumulated grime of an entire inn's worth of guests. "You know what? Never mind, I'm good. I'll figure something else out." "Suit yourself." Marta wandered off, leaving Benny standing in front of the communal disease soup masquerading as a bath. He needed soap. Real soap. Clean soap. And clean water. Benny headed into town, asking at various shops about soap. What he discovered made his wallet cry. Soap was expensive. Really expensive. A single small bar of basic soap cost 2 silver rene. Fancy scented soap? 5 silver or more. Most common people apparently just went without or used harsh lye soap that stripped the skin and smelled like chemicals. "I can make my own," Benny muttered to himself, standing in the middle of the market square. "I've seen it done. How hard can it be?" The answer, as he would soon discover, was harder than he thought, with predictably disastrous results. But for now, optimism reigned. Benny spent the next hour gathering materials based on half-remembered information from a documentary he'd watched once about historical soap making. He bought lye from an apothecary after confirming 3 times it was actually lye and not some kind of skin-melting poison. He got animal fat from a butcher, oil from a merchant, and then he found something interesting: leaves from a plant vendor. "These smell like mint," Benny said, holding up a bundle of dark green leaves. "Aye, frost mint," the vendor confirmed. "Good for cooking, good for sachets. Some people dry 'em and put 'em in their clothes to smell nice. Perfect, I'll take 2 bundles. He also noticed another plant with purple flowers. "What's this one?" "Lavender. Smells right pretty. Ladies like it." Benny bought a bundle of that too, thinking he could make different scented soaps. Maybe even give some to the guild members as an apology. A peace offering. "Sorry I made you all vomit. Here's some nice-smelling soap." With his materials gathered and his coin purse significantly lighter, Benny headed back to the guild to use the kitchen. He made it exactly 3 steps inside before someone yelled, "Benny Bobo is back!" The entire room turned to look at him. The mood was... "Hi," Benny said weakly. "I was wondering if I could use the kitchen to make some..." "No!" The response was immediate and unified, coming from at least a dozen voices simultaneously. "But I just want to. Get out of the kitchen!" "No more cooking! We're still cleaning up vomit from yesterday." Martha appeared from the kitchen, her expression dark. "Benny Bobo, if you so much as think about entering my kitchen again, I will personally throw you into the nearest well. Do you understand me?" "I just wanted to make soap," Benny said. "Not food. Just soap, to help everyone smell better." "Make it somewhere else," Martha said firmly. "Anywhere else. The other side of the world would be preferable." Okay, I'm going." Benny backed out of the guild, feeling dozens of hostile eyes on him. Outside the city walls it was then. He found a spot about 100 yards from the east gate, far enough that he wouldn't be immediately associated with the city if something went wrong, close enough that he could get help if needed. Benny gathered some stones and built a small fire pit. He arranged his materials carefully, then started the fire using some flint and steel he'd bought in town. "Hey!" You there! Benny looked up to see two city guards approaching. One was young, maybe early 20s, with nervous eyes. The other was older, grizzled, with the look of someone who'd seen everything. "What are you doing out here, kid?" the older guard asked. "I'm getting ready to make soap," Benny explained. "The guild won't let me use their kitchen." The guards exchanged glances. The younger one took a step back. "Soap," the older guard repeated. "You're the kid from the guild, aren't you? The one who poisoned everyone twice?" "I didn't mean to. No judgment, just stating facts." The guard considered for a moment. "Soap making, huh? Haven't seen anyone do that in years. Most people just buy it or go without." He looked at his partner. "Get back to your post. I'm going to watch this. Might learn something useful." The younger guard was only too happy to retreat. Benny set to work while the guard watched from a safe distance. He heated the fat in a pot he'd bought, rendered it down, then carefully added the lye water mixture he'd prepared. The process was delicate. Too much lye and the soap would be caustic. Too little and it wouldn't solidify properly. He stirred constantly, keeping the heat steady, watching as the mixture began to transform. It was actually kind of fascinating. The fat and lye reacted, saponifying, becoming something new. "You know what you're doing," the guard observed. "My grandmother used to make soap," Benny lied. Well, half lied. His grandmother had existed, just not in this world. "She taught me the process." "Huh, thought you were just a walking disaster. That too." When the soap mixture reached the right consistency, thick, creamy, starting to trace when he drizzled it from the spoon, Benny removed it from the heat. He divided it into portions. To one batch he added crushed frost mint leaves. To another he added lavender. The third batch he left plain as a control group. Then he noticed them. Small red seeds in the bundle of lavender. They looked like they might be lavender seeds, or maybe they'd just gotten mixed in during harvesting. "These will probably add texture," Benny reasoned, "like those fancy exfoliating soaps." He crushed a few and added them to several of the lavender soap portions. The guard watched as Benny poured the soap into molds he'd fashioned from small wooden boxes. "How long before it's ready?" "Needs to cure for a bit," Benny said. "But in this heat, maybe a few hours for basic use. Won't be perfect, but it'll work." They waited. The guard sat on a rock and told Benny stories about his years in the City Watch. Benny shared carefully edited stories from his adventures so far, leaving out the more embarrassing details. When the soap had solidified enough to handle, Benny tested a bar of the mint soap. It lathered well, smelled fresh and clean, and seemed perfectly safe. "I'm going to take a bath," Benny announced. "There's a river nearby, right?" "About half a mile that way," the guard pointed. Clean water flows down from the mountains. Good spot for bathing. Benny gathered up his soap bars. He'd made about 20 in total and thanked the guard. Then he made his way to the river. The water was perfect. Cold and clear, flowing over smooth stones, surrounded by trees that provided privacy. Benny stripped down, carefully set his clothes on a rock, and waded into the water. The cold was shocking but invigorating. He used his mint soap liberally, scrubbing away 2 weeks of accumulated grime. The soap lathered beautifully, and the mint scent was refreshing, almost medicinal. It reminded him of mentholatum, that chest rub his mother used to use when he had a cold. When he was finished, Benny felt like a new person. Clean, fresh, actually pleasant to be around. He dried off with a cloth he'd brought, dressed in his cleanest clothes, and headed back to town. On the way, he stopped at a shop he'd noticed earlier, a general goods store that had something interesting, a bag of holding. It was expensive, 5 silver rennie, which was almost all the money he had left, but it would let him carry all his soap-making materials without lugging around heavy bags. The shopkeeper demonstrated how it worked. The bag was magically enlarged on the inside, capable of holding far more than its outside dimensions suggested. Weight was reduced too, though not eliminated entirely. Benny bought it, transferred all his materials and soap bars into it, and marveled at how light it felt. Then he headed to the guild. The reaction when he walked in was immediate hostility. People glared, someone threw a wadded-up piece of paper at him, another person made an exaggerated vomiting sound. Benny ignored them all and set up his peace offering on one of the central tables. He arranged the soap bars neatly on a tray and placed a handwritten note beside them. "I'm very, very sorry I made you all sick." I made you this soap to say I'm sorry. It's nothing extravagant, nothing weird, just basic soap. It has a good lather and it'll help you get clean. I'm sure most of you would rather smell good than use the disgusting cleaning facilities we have here at the Guild. Just head down to the local river and take a bath. You'll feel so much better. I took one earlier, so you know it's okay. Nothing's wrong with me, and you can tell I smell pretty darn good. He stepped away from the table and made his way to the quest board, trying to look nonchalant. Is this a trap? Someone asked loudly. Probably, another voice agreed. He's going to poison us again. Or make us shit ourselves, or both. But then someone brave, or foolish, approached the table. It was Sarah, the woman who'd identified the crapping powder and had been one of the victims of the vomiting cookies. She picked up the note, read it, then looked over at Benny. He was standing at the quest board, studiously examining the available jobs, trying not to look like he was paying attention. Sarah walked over to him. Benny tensed, expecting another accusation or threat. Instead, Sarah leaned in and sniffed. You actually do smell good, she said, surprised. Like, really good. Clean, fresh. Thanks, Benny said carefully, and you seem fine. No weird symptoms? None. I've been using the soap all day. It's just soap, I promise. Sarah studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I'm going to trust you one more time. But Benny, if this goes wrong, I'm going to personally ensure you never reproduce. Understand? Crystal clear. Sarah went back to the table, grabbed 2 bars of the lavender soap, and left the guild. Over the next hour, 3 more people decided to try it. All men, burly adventurers who looked like they could survive anything, even Benny's chaos magic. They each took soap bars and headed out, presumably toward the river. The women, notably, all refused. Every single one. They'd learned their lesson. Everything Benny had produced so far had resulted in pain and suffering. They weren't about to risk it, no matter how clean he smelled. Benny couldn't blame them. He turned his attention back to the quest board and found something perfect, an escort quest. A merchant needed protection while traveling to a town called Venomar, about 5 leagues away. The pay was good, 3 silver ren and 10 copper, and it would get Benny out of the city for a while, which seemed like an excellent idea given the current atmosphere. The note said he'd be gone about a week. Perfect. Benny took the posting to Vera, who raised an eyebrow when she saw what he'd chosen. Escort quest? Those can be dangerous, you know. I know, but I need to leave town for a bit. Let things calm down. Vera's expression softened slightly. Fair enough. The merchant's name is Roderick. He's waiting by the north gate with his wagon. Good luck, Benny. Try not to accidentally poison anyone on the road. That's the plan. Benny gathered his belongings, which now all fit neatly in his bag of holding, and made his way to the north gate. Roderick turned out to be a portly man in his 50s with a friendly face and a wagon loaded with trade goods, fabrics, tools, preserved foods, and various other items he planned to sell in Venomar. You're my guard? Roderick asked, looking Benny up and down with obvious skepticism. You're just a kid. I'm a registered adventurer, Benny said, showing his guild card. Frank, but still official. Frank, Roderick repeated. That's the bottom, isn't it? I'm new, but I can handle myself. That was a lie. Benny had no combat training whatsoever, but he had chaos magic, whatever that meant, and he was desperate to get out of the city before anyone discovered his soap might be problematic. Roderick sighed. Well, you're what the guild sent me. Climb aboard. We've got a long journey ahead. Benny climbed into the wagon, settling onto the bench beside Roderick. The merchant clicked his tongue, and the horses began to move. They passed through the north gate, the guards waving them through, and set out on the road to Venomar. The countryside rolled past. Fields of grain, scattered farms, small villages. The day was pleasant, the weather perfect for traveling. Benny began to relax. This was good. No disasters, no poisonings, just a simple escort job. Protect the wagon, help Roderick with any problems, get paid at the end. Easy. Simple. What could possibly go wrong? Back at the guild, things were going surprisingly well for the 4 brave souls who'd tried Benny's soap. They'd gone to the river, bathed thoroughly, and returned to the guild smelling absolutely wonderful. The mint and lavender scents were pleasant without being overpowering. The soap had lathered beautifully, leaving their skin feeling clean and refreshed. I can't believe it, one of them said. A fighter named Marcus. Not the same Marcus who'd rescued Benny, a different one. Benny actually made something that works, something good. Don't jinx it, his companion warned. Give it time. But as the afternoon wore on, more guild members started noticing how good the four bathed adventurers smelled. Conversations started. Is that lavender? Yeah, from Benny's soap. And you're okay? No vomiting? No explosive diarrhea? Nothing. I feel great. I smell great. The soap is actually good. Word spread. The skepticism began to crack. If 4 people could use the soap without incident, maybe, just maybe, Benny had actually produced something useful for once. More adventurers approached the table. They took bars of soap, some mint, some lavender, and headed out to bathe. A few even went to the local bathhouse, preferring to pay for the private facilities rather than bathe in the river. By late afternoon, nearly 20 guild members had used Benny's soap. Then the itching started. Marcus felt it first. A slight tickle on his arm, then his chest, then his back. Within minutes, the tickle had become an itch. Within 10 minutes, the itch had become unbearable. He started scratching, couldn't help it. The itch was maddening, impossible to ignore. Red bumps began appearing on his skin. Everywhere he'd used the soap, which was everywhere he'd bathed, was now covered in raised, angry welts that itched with supernatural intensity. What the? Marcus looked down at his arms in horror. What's happening? The other 3 original soap users were experiencing the same thing, scratching frantically, red bumps spreading across their skin like some kind of plague. Not again! Someone shouted. What did Benny do to us this time? The guild members who'd bathed more recently started feeling it too. The itch hit them in waves. First the early bathers, then those who'd bathed an hour ago, then the most recent ones, like a curse spreading through the guild in reverse chronological order. People were scratching everywhere. Arms, legs, backs, the worst spots, places you really didn't want to itch in public, were the worst affected. Someone grabbed one of the remaining soap bars and examined it closely. There's something in here, they said, holding it up to the light. Little red seeds. An alchemist in the guild, a woman who specialized in potions and herbs, took the bar and studied it carefully. She extracted one of the seeds, smelled it, then her face went pale. Itching seeds, she announced. These are itching seeds. Trappers use them to catch a certain type of slime that's attracted to the irritation. Benny put itching seeds in the soap. The guild exploded in curses and shouts. Where is he? Find Benny Bobo! I'm going to kill him! I'm going to make him eat the soap! Vera checked her records. He took an escort quest. Left about 2 hours ago. He's heading to Venomar. Won't be back for a week. Of course he left town. He knew. He poisoned us and ran. Someone noticed something interesting, though. One of the unaffected guild members, a woman who'd wisely avoided the soap, picked up the bar that Benny had clearly used himself, the one that smelled strongly of mint. This one doesn't have the seeds, she reported. Just the mint. The plain ones are fine, too. It's only the lavender soap that's contaminated. So Benny used the safe soap and gave everyone else the itching soap? Someone asked. Looks like it. Fury rippled through the itching, scratching, miserable guild members. Benny Poo Poo is dead when he gets back! About 20 miles outside of Mundell, sitting on a wagon bench beside Roderick and watching the countryside pass by, Benny suddenly felt a chill run up his spine. He shivered involuntarily, then sneezed. "Bless you," Roderick said. Benny sneezed again. "Someone's talking about you," Roderick observed. "That's what my grandmother always said. Sneeze 3 times, someone's speaking your name." Benny felt the chill intensify. A sense of foreboding settled over him like a cold blanket. "Oh," he said quietly. "Oh no, what's wrong?" "That's never a good sign," Benny said, staring back in the direction of Mundell. "When people talk about me, it's never good. It usually means I've accidentally done something terrible and they're plotting revenge. Did you do something terrible before you left?" "I made soap." "Soap? What's terrible about soap?" "With me?" "Everything," Benny said miserably. "Everything is terrible. I'm a walking disaster, a chaos sorcerer. Everything I touch turns to catastrophe." Roderick laughed, thinking Benny was joking. Benny wasn't joking. Somewhere behind them in the city of Mundell at the Adventurers Guild, 20 people were scratching themselves bloody and swearing vengeance on Benny Bobo, also known as Benny Poo Poo, also known as Benny Pook Pookie, and soon to be known as Benny Itch Itch. But for now at least, Benny was safely out of range. He had a week before he had to go back and face the consequences. A week to figure out how to apologize for accidentally poisoning the guild for the third time. "I need to stop making things," Benny said aloud. "What?" Roderick asked. "Nothing. Just talking to myself." The wagon rolled on through the afternoon, carrying Benny farther from Mundell and the disaster he'd left behind, toward Venimar and whatever new chaos awaited him there. Because if there was one thing Benny had learned in his new life, it was this. Disasters followed him like a loyal dog. And they were very, very good at finding him, no matter how far he ran. The Chaos Sorcerer, Benny Bobo, Chapter 7, The Shampoo Disaster and the Bald Princess. The journey to Venimar took 3 days of steady travel. The road wound through rolling hills and dense forests, past small farming communities and the occasional roadside shrine. Roderick turned out to be excellent company, full of stories about his trading ventures and willing to share his provisions without complaint. They encountered no bandits, no monsters, no trouble whatsoever. It was, by Benny's standards, suspiciously uneventful. When they finally rolled into Venimar on the afternoon of the third day, Benny was almost disappointed by how smoothly everything had gone. The town was larger than Mundell, with wider streets and more impressive buildings. The Adventurers Guild here was a grand 3-story structure with actual glass windows and a painted sign that looked professionally made. Benny accompanied Roderick to the guild to turn in the quest completion. The receptionist, a young man with neat hair and a crisp uniform, processed the paperwork without any fanfare. He didn't know Benny, had never heard of Benny, had no idea about the legendary disasters that had earned him 3 different embarrassing nicknames. It was glorious. "Quest complete," the receptionist said, stamping the paperwork and counting out Benny's payment. 3 silver wrens and 10 copper. "Well done." "Thank you," Benny said, accepting the coins with something approaching joy. No laughter, no jokes about his balls, no references to vomiting or diarrhea, just professional courtesy. Roderick clapped him on the shoulder. "You did good work, kid. I'm going to spend some time here in Venimar. Got business to conduct, people to see. You can head back to Mundell on your own whenever you're ready." "Sounds good. Thanks for the company." They parted ways outside the guild. Benny stood in the street of this unfamiliar town, suddenly aware that he was alone, far from Mundell, and nobody here knew him as anything other than a random F-rank adventurer. The freedom was intoxicating. He found an inn, the Silver Stag, and rented a room for the night. It was nicer than the Sleeping Dragon, with clean sheets and a window that actually had glass. The price was steep, 8 copper rennas, but Benny felt he'd earned it. After settling in, he realized something. His hair felt greasy. 3 days on the road, sleeping in the wagon, dealing with dust and travel grime, his hair was a disaster. And while he'd brought 1 bar of the mint soap with him in his bag of holding, he had no shampoo. "I could make shampoo," Benny said to himself, pacing in his room. "I made soap successfully. Well, mostly successfully, ignoring the itching seeds incident. Shampoo is basically liquid soap for hair. How hard could it be?" His track record suggested very hard, with catastrophic results. But Benny's optimism was eternal, and his memory was apparently very short. "And if I make good shampoo," he continued, warming to the idea, "I could sell it here, make some money, build a reputation in Venimar as something other than a disaster." The plan was perfect. Foolproof, even. The Venimar market district was impressive, with vendors selling goods from all across the region. Benny wandered through, gathering ingredients with his newfound wealth. He found oils, light, fragrant oils that would make a good base for shampoo. He found the same frost mint leaves he'd used in his soap, which had worked perfectly. He found some kind of thickening agent the vendor assured him was used in hair products. Then he saw something unusual. On a table near the back of one stall, surrounded by various powders and dried herbs, was a small jar filled with fine, purple dust. It had a beautiful shimmer to it, catching the light like crushed amethyst. "What's this used for?" Benny asked, pointing at it. The merchant, an elderly man who was helping another customer, glanced over. "Many things, including cooking," he said absently. Benny picked up the jar. It smelled faintly sweet, almost floral. "This would be perfect for scenting shampoo," he muttered. "I'll buy a jar of this." "Which one?" the merchant asked, still not really paying attention. Benny held up the purple jar. "This one. Fine, fine. 2 silver." Benny paid and added the jar to his bag of holding, completely unaware that he was pointing at the purple shimmer dust, while the merchant thought he was asking about the brown powder next to it, labeled shaven dust for cooking and cleaning. What Benny had actually purchased was a jar of balding dust, a reagent used by alchemists to remove unwanted hair from animal hides during leather processing. It was never ever supposed to come in contact with human scalp. But Benny didn't know that. He gathered a few more supplies, spent another silver and change, and then headed outside the city walls to find a spot to work. The guards at the gate watched with mild curiosity as Benny set up his small campfire and began mixing ingredients in a pot. They'd seen stranger things, and at least the kid had asked permission first. Benny worked carefully, following his instincts and half-remembered commercials about shampoo from his old world. He mixed the oils with water, added the thickening agent, and heated it gently until it reached a nice, viscous consistency. Then he divided the mixture into 3 batches. The first batch he added the purple shimmer dust, what he thought was some kind of exotic scenting powder. The mixture turned a beautiful lavender purple color and smelled absolutely divine, floral and sweet, but not overwhelming. "Women would love this," Benny said aloud, bottling it carefully in glass containers he'd bought. "This smells amazing." The second batch he added crushed frost mint leaves, the same thing he'd used successfully in his soap. This turned a pale green and smelled fresh and clean. The third batch he left plain. No scent, no color. Some people preferred unscented products, he reasoned. When he was finished, he had about a dozen bottles of shampoo, 4 of each type. He was quite proud of himself. "Now to test it," Benny said. He asked one of the guards, "Is there somewhere I could take a bath without having to spend money on it?" The guard pointed. "There's a lake about 2 or 3 miles in that direction. Clean water, private. Lots of folks use it for bathing." "Perfect. Thank you." Benny packed everything into his bag of holding and set off toward the lake. The lake was beautiful, crystal-clear water surrounded by willows, with a small beach of smooth pebbles, completely private, with no one else around. Benny stripped down, waded into the cool water, and began his bath. He used his mint soap first, lathering up his body thoroughly. Then he reached for the mint-scented shampoo. Matching scents made sense to him. He worked the shampoo into his hair, marveling at how well it lathered. It felt professional, like something you'd buy in a store. The mint scent was refreshing, almost medicinal in a pleasant way. He rinsed thoroughly, then repeated the process to make sure his hair was completely clean. When he emerged from the lake and dried off, running his fingers through his hair, it felt amazing. Soft, clean, practically glistening in the afternoon sunlight. There was just one small problem. Benny caught sight of his reflection in the still water near the shore and froze. His hair was blonde. Not just a little blonde, not highlights or a subtle tint. Bright, golden blonde, like he'd bleached it professionally. What the? Benny touched his hair, which definitely felt like his hair, just cleaner and blonde. There must have been something in the mint leaves, some kind of bleaching agent I didn't know about. He examined his reflection more closely. Honestly, it didn't look bad. Kind of suited him, actually. Made him look different from the brown-haired Sam Winters he used to be. "Okay," Benny said to his blonde reflection. "Blonde hair? I can work with this. It's not a disaster. Just unexpected. Character development. New look for the new world." He got dressed, packed up his things, and headed back to Venomar with his dozen bottles of shampoo. Back in town, Benny decided to try selling his product. He approached a general store first, a well-stocked shop that sold everything from rope to dried goods to basic toiletries. "Excuse me," Benny said to the shopkeeper, a middle-aged man with a calculating look in his eyes. "I have 3 kinds of shampoo I'd love to sell to your shop." The shopkeeper looked skeptical. "Shampoo? We already carry soap. This is different, better, for hair specifically." Benny held up the bottles. "I have 3 varieties, scented, mint, and unscented." "Did you use any of these?" "Yes, I used the mint kind." Benny leaned forward slightly. "Smell my hair. You can tell it's very clean." The shopkeeper leaned in and sniffed. His eyebrows rose. "That does smell good. Very clean. Fresh. And your hair looks—" He paused, studying Benny's bright blonde locks. "Healthy, shiny." "I also use soap I make," Benny added, holding out his arm. "Feel, my skin is very soft and smooth." The shopkeeper touched Benny's arm, then nodded thoughtfully. You know what? I'll take a chance. How much do you want for the lot? I was thinking. Benny did some quick mental math, trying not to seem too eager. 2 silver per bottle? I have 12 bottles total. The shopkeeper countered. I'll give you 7 gold for everything. The 12 bottles of shampoo and any soap you have on you. Benny's heart nearly stopped. 7 gold. That was 70 silver, 700 copper. More money than he'd ever had at one time in either of his lives. Deal! He practically shouted it, then tried to compose himself. I mean, yes, that sounds fair. They shook hands. The shopkeeper counted out 7 gold coins, 4 silver coins, and 3 copper. Apparently he'd rounded up slightly. Benny walked out of that shop feeling like royalty. He had money, real money. Enough to live on for months if he was careful. He was so excited that he decided to do something generous. He went back to the Adventurers Guild and left 3 bottles of shampoo at the front desk with a note, "Free shampoo for guild members. Enjoy." Then he prepared to leave. He'd been in Venimar for less than a day, but he'd accomplished what he came for, made money, established a product, and proven to himself that he could create something useful. The walk back to Mundell would take about a week on foot, but Benny had supplies, money, and newfound confidence. He said his goodbyes to the few people he'd met in town, shook hands with the guards at the gate, and set off down the road. This is going to be a good walk, he told himself. Plenty of time to think. Maybe hunt for some meat, practice my survival skills, and hopefully people won't be too mad at me when I get back. The soup was an accident. The cookies were an accident. The soap, okay, that was also an accident. But accidents happen, right? The countryside was beautiful. Birds sang. The weather was perfect. Benny felt for the first time since arriving in this world like things might actually be going his way. Back in Venimar, things were going well. At first, the shampoo at the guild was discovered by several adventurers who tried it that evening. Most chose the mint variety. It smelled good and seemed safe. A few brave souls tried the unscented version. One person tried the beautiful purple shampoo. By the next morning, the mint users were thrilled. Their hair was clean, shiny, and smelled wonderful. The unscented users were similarly pleased. No complaints whatsoever. The person who'd used the purple shampoo woke up to find their hair was fine. Clean. Nice. No problems. The shopkeeper, meanwhile, had displayed his new inventory prominently. Fresh shampoo! Just arrived, the sign proclaimed. The bottles sold quickly. The purple ones especially. They were so pretty and they smelled so good. Mostly women bought them, along with a few men who wanted to give gifts to wives or daughters. By the second day after Benny's departure, things started to go wrong. A woman came into the shop, furious. My hair is falling out. I used that purple shampoo and my hair is falling out. The shopkeeper was confused. That can't be right. The boy who sold it to me used it himself and his hair looked fine. He used the mint one, the woman shrieked. I remember. He said he used the mint kind, not the purple. More complaints flooded in. People who'd used the purple shampoo were losing hair. Not just a little, clumps of it, by the handful. Within 2 days of using the product, users were going bald. The mint and unscented shampoos were fine. Perfect, even. But the purple shampoo was a disaster. The crisis reached its peak when a royal procession passed through Venimar. The princess of the northern province, a young woman named Alara, known for her beautiful long auburn hair, was traveling to her family's summer estate. One of her maids, eager to impress, had purchased a bottle of the purple shampoo from the shopkeeper. For your highness, she'd said, the finest new product from Venimar. It smells divine. The princess, always willing to try quality products, had used it that evening. The next morning, she woke to find chunks of her hair on her pillow. By noon, she was nearly bald. The royal guards descended on Venimar like a swarm of very angry, very armed locusts. The shopkeeper was arrested immediately. I swear! He protested as they dragged him away. I bought it from a boy named Bobo. He should be at the Adventurers Guild. He's the one who made it. The guards searched the guild. They found no one by that name currently registered there. The receptionist checked his records. We did have a quest completion a few days ago, he said carefully. Escort mission. The adventurer's name was listed as Benny. Last name, it might have been Bobo. The handwriting is unclear. Where is he now? He left town. I believe he was heading back to Mundell. The guards demanded more information. The guild, adhering to their policy of protecting their members from noble persecution, provided minimal details. Yes, someone named Benny had been there. Yes, he'd left. No, they didn't know exactly where he was now. No, they wouldn't provide his full registration details without a formal warrant. The nobles were furious, but the guild stood firm. Adventurers' guild neutrality was sacred. They didn't hand over members to angry nobility without proper legal proceedings. The guards sent word ahead to Mundell. A young man named Benny Bobo, possibly dangerous, possibly a criminal, had created a product that caused baldness in dozens of people, including a princess. If seen, he should be detained for questioning. 5 days into his journey back to Mundell, Benny was having a wonderful time. He'd successfully hunted a rabbit using a summoned bow and arrow. The arrow had disappeared after hitting the target, but the rabbit remained, thankfully. He'd cooked it over a fire using actual seasoning, real pepper and salt he'd bought in Venimar. It was delicious. He'd slept under the stars, practiced his summoning magic, discovering he could create temporary shelters that lasted a few hours, and generally enjoyed the solitude. That evening, sitting by his campfire and roasting another rabbit, Benny felt content. Then the chill hit. It started at the base of his spine and shot upward like ice water through his veins. His whole body shivered involuntarily. Then he sneezed. Once, twice, 3 times. "Oh no," Benny said aloud. A bird in a nearby tree seemed to laugh at him. "Someone's talking about me," Benny muttered, remembering Roderick's grandmother's superstition. "And if someone's talking about me, it means I've done something terrible again." He reviewed his recent actions. The shampoo. He'd made shampoo, sold it, left samples at the guild, used it himself with no problems. But the purple shampoo, what had been in that purple dust? "I've got a bad feeling about this one," Benny said to the fire. "A really bad feeling." The rabbit continued roasting, oblivious to Benny's growing sense of doom. Somewhere ahead, in the city of Mundell, the guild members were still dealing with itchy welts from the soap. Somewhere behind in Venimar, a princess was bald and guards were searching for him. And somewhere in between, Benny Bobo, chaos sorcerer, accidental poisoner, and walking disaster, continued his journey home, completely unaware that he was now wanted for crimes against nobility. "Tomorrow will be better," Benny told himself, settling into his bedroll. "Tomorrow I'll get closer to Mundell, and everything will be fine. The soap incident will have blown over. People will have forgiven me. I'll explain about the shampoo if anyone asks. It'll all work out." He fell asleep to the crackling of the fire and the sounds of the forest, his blonde hair gleaming in the firelight, his bag of holding containing evidence of multiple crimes against grooming. Above, the stars wheeled across the sky, indifferent to the chaos that followed Benny Bobo like a faithful shadow. 3 more days to Mundell. 3 more days before he discovered just how angry people could get about accidentally making them bald. 3 more days of peace before the storm. Benny snored softly, dreaming of a world where his chaos magic worked properly and nothing ever went catastrophically wrong. It was a nice dream. Reality, as Benny would soon discover, had other plans. The next morning, Benny woke refreshed and continued his journey. The road wound through increasingly familiar territory. He recognized landmarks from his trip out to Venimar. Each step brought him closer to Mundell, to the guild, to whatever consequences awaited him. He tried not to think about the triple sneeze, tried not to worry about what it might mean. "Probably nothing," he said to a passing squirrel. "Probably just someone at the guild saying, 'Hey, wonder when Benny's coming back?' Totally innocent. Nothing to worry about." The squirrel chittered at him in a way that sounded distinctly skeptical. Benny walked on, his blonde hair bright in the morning sun, his bag of holding full of supplies and completely devoid of any incriminating shampoo bottles, his pockets full of gold coins earned from what he thought was legitimate business. 2 more days to Mundell. The countdown continued. And in Venimar, the guards intensified their search, following rumors of a blonde-haired young adventurer heading west on foot. The chase was on. Benny just didn't know it yet. The Chaos Sorcerer Benny Bobo Chapter 8, The Wrong Turn and the Lucky Escape. Benny stood at the crossroads, staring at 3 diverging paths with a growing sense of uncertainty. Straight ahead, the road continued into dense forest. To the left, it curved around a hill and disappeared from view. To the right, it descended into a valley where he could see what looked like farmland in the distance. "Okay," Benny said aloud, trying to jog his memory. "We came through here on the way to Venimar. I was in the wagon with Roderick. We definitely came through a crossroads at some point." The problem was, he'd been half asleep for most of that journey, lulled by the rocking of the wagon and Roderick's droning stories about textile prices. He couldn't remember which direction they'd come from. He studied each path carefully, looking for anything familiar. A distinctive tree, a landmark, anything. Nothing looked familiar. "Left feels wrong," he muttered. "Right also feels wrong. Straight feels right. I'm absolutely sure that if I go straight, I'll eventually hit Mundell. Yeah, definitely straight." It was not straight. The correct path was right. But Benny, with the confidence of someone who had no idea what he was doing, chose straight and continued on his way, whistling a tune from his old world and feeling pleased with his navigation skills. About 2 hours after Benny had passed through, the crossroads received new visitors. 300 mounted knights in full royal regalia thundered down the road from Venimar, their armor gleaming, their horses' hooves kicking up clouds of dust. At their head rode Captain Aldrich, a grim-faced man with a scar across his jaw and a personal investment in finding the criminal who'd made Princess Alara bald. They reached the crossroads and pulled up short. "Which way?" One of the knights called out. Captain Aldrich consulted a map. Mundell should be. He traced the route with his finger. Left. The direct route to Mundell is left. What about the other directions? Straight leads to the Thornwood region, mostly wilderness. Right goes down to the farming valleys and eventually to Lionholm, but that's way off course. He's heading to Mundell. We go left. The entire procession wheeled left and thundered off, completely missing Benny's trail. Benny walked for 2 more weeks. It was, by any objective measure, a very long time to be walking in the wrong direction before realizing you were lost. But Benny was enjoying himself. The weather was good. He'd gotten quite proficient at hunting rabbits with his summoned bow. He'd discovered that if he concentrated hard enough, he could summon a small tent that lasted about 6 hours, perfect for sleeping. He'd also learned that summoned food still tasted like disappointment, so he'd been living off rabbit, wild berries he'd carefully had verified by asking passing travelers, and the occasional loaf of bread he bought from farmhouses along the way. The road had gotten progressively less traveled, fewer merchants, fewer travelers, more wilderness. "I don't remember it being this remote on the way to Venimar," Benny said to himself on the 14th day. "Maybe I'm just noticing it more because I'm on foot." That's when he saw the town. It emerged from the forest like a surprise gift. Stone walls, guard towers, the distinctive architecture of a proper settlement. Benny's heart leaped with relief. Finally, I must be getting close to Mundell. He approached the gates where 2 guards stood watching his approach with mild curiosity. "Afternoon," one of them said. "Business in Lionholm?" "Lionholm?" Benny repeated. That didn't sound right. "Is there an adventurers' guild here?" "Aye, in the town square. You look lost, son." I might be," Benny admitted. "I'm trying to get back to my guild. I don't recognize this place at all." "Where are you trying to go?" "Back to my guild. In the town where? Benny's face scrunched up in concentration. "I can't remember the name. It's a medium-sized city. Stone walls, has a big market square. The guild building has a sword and shield sign." The guards exchanged glances. "That could describe half the towns in the kingdom, kid." "We came through Venimar on the way there. I was doing an escort quest." "Venimar?" The first guard's eyebrows rose. "You're way off course then. Venimar's back east. You've been heading west." "What?" Benny's stomach dropped. "But I've been walking for 2 weeks." "In the wrong direction, apparently. Look, we've got an adventurers' guild here. If you've got a license, head there and ask. They'll know how to get you where you're going." Benny thanked them and entered Lionholm, feeling like an idiot. 2 weeks. He'd been walking the wrong way for 2 weeks. The Lionholm Adventurers Guild was smaller than Mundell's, but well-maintained, with a professional atmosphere. The receptionist was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Help you?" she asked as Benny approached. "I'm completely and utterly lost," Benny said, pulling out his guild card. I'm trying to get back to my home guild, but I can't remember the name of the town. The woman took his card and examined it. Benny Bobo, F rank, registered in. She squinted at the stamp. Mundell. You're trying to get to Mundell. Yes, Mundell. That's it. You're about 150 miles off course, she said flatly. Mundell is back the way you came, roughly 50 miles. Then you turn right at the crossroads and continue east for another 100 miles. Benny's face went pale. 150 miles total? Give or take. Did you get turned around at the Thornwood crossroads? I might have. Most people do. Tricky spot. No signs. She handed his card back. You need lodging for the night? Got some local quests you could do to earn coin for the journey back? Yes, please. What do you have? She directed him to the quest board. Being F rank limited his options, but there were several simple delivery quests, taking messages from one part of town to another, delivering packages, that sort of thing. Benny took 7 different quests, all within Lionholm, all simple, all relatively well-paying for the amount of effort required. He spent the rest of the day and into the evening running all over town, delivering a letter to a blacksmith, taking a package to a seamstress, carrying a message to the town mayor. Simple, straightforward work that required nothing more than walking and handing things to people. By the time he completed the 7th quest, it was close to midnight. He'd earned 2 silver wrens and 18 copper, enough for a room and food. He found an inn called the Wandering Minstrel and rented a room for the night. The innkeeper, a kindly woman who seemed concerned that he was traveling alone so young, insisted on feeding him even though the kitchen was closed. She brought him a blueberry muffin, still warm, probably from that morning's batch, and a glass of ale. Benny had never had real ale before. The guild served weak beer sometimes, but this was different. It was sweet and malty, with a pleasant warmth that spread through his chest. It tasted like bread in liquid form, but in a good way. This is really good, he said, surprised. My husband brews it himself, the woman said proudly. Best ale in 3 counties. You enjoy that, dear, and get some rest. You look exhausted. Benny finished the muffin and ale, then dragged himself up to his room. The bed was comfortable, the room was clean, and he was asleep within minutes. While Benny slept peacefully in Lionholm, completely unaware of his close call, 300 royal knights arrived in the town just before dawn. They'd ridden hard, following the road from the crossroads, checking every town and village along the way. Captain Aldrich was determined. The princess's baldness was a national embarrassment, and heads would roll if the culprit wasn't found, literally. They were considering execution. The knights spread through Lionholm, asking about a young blonde man, possibly carrying unusual goods, possibly calling himself Benny Bobo. They checked the inn. The innkeeper, roused from sleep and terrified by the armed soldiers, swore she hadn't seen anyone matching that description. They checked the guild. The receptionist, with the iron spine that all guild administrators seem to possess, looked at the knights coldly. We had a young F-rank adventurer through here last night, she said. Took some delivery quests, but I'm not in the habit of giving out adventure information to armed forces without proper legal documentation. This is a matter of royal importance, Captain Aldrich thundered. Then get a royal warrant, she replied calmly, with proper seals and signatures. Until then, Adventurers Guild neutrality applies. We don't hand over our members. The knights wanted to press the issue, but the guild was sacred ground. Even royal forces couldn't simply storm in and take what they wanted without proper authority. Frustrated, they left Lionholm and headed back toward Venimar to report their failure and acquire the proper documentation. They missed Benny by hours. Benny woke around 9 in the morning, later than he'd intended, but deeply refreshed. The bed had been wonderful, and the ale from the night before had helped him sleep like the dead. He went downstairs for breakfast, porridge, but actual good porridge with honey and nuts, not the flavorless paste the Mundell Guild served. The innkeeper insisted he eat well before his journey. After settling his bill and thanking the woman profusely, Benny headed out of town. The guards at the gate pointed him in the right direction, back the way he'd come, then right at the crossroads. Can't miss it, one assured him. Just follow the road east. You'll hit Mundell in about 4 days if you keep a good pace. 4 days. Benny could do 4 days. He set off with renewed purpose, his blonde hair gleaming in the morning sun, his bag of holding containing all his worldly possessions and enough gold to live comfortably for months. Back in Mundell, concern was growing. It had been 3 weeks since Benny had left for Venamar. The escort quest should have taken a week, maybe 10 days round trip. 3 weeks was pushing into something went wrong territory. Think he got killed? Someone asked at the guild. Or lost, another suggested, or arrested for poisoning someone in Venamar. A third added with dark humor. Vera, the guild administrator, decided to check. She pulled out a crystal ball, an expensive piece of equipment used for long-distance communication between guild branches, and contacted Venamar. "This is Mundell Guild," she said into the swirling mist inside the crystal. "We're checking on one of our members. F rank. Name of Benny Bobo. Did he complete an escort quest to your location?" The Venamar receptionist's face appeared in the mist. "Benny Bobo?" "Yes, he was here. Completed the quest without issue. Left town about 3 weeks ago. Said he was heading back to you." 3 weeks? Vera's brow furrowed. "He should have been back by now. It's only a week's journey. You think he got lost? With Benny Utley. Kid's a walking disaster." Back in the main hall, word spread quickly. Benny was lost somewhere between Venamar and Mundell. The anger that had been simmering for weeks, the itching soap incident was still fresh in everyone's minds, with some people still dealing with residual welts, began to fade, replaced by concern. "He's just a kid," Sarah said, scratching absently at a fading rash on her arm. "A stupid kid who keeps accidentally poisoning us, but still just a kid." 3 weeks in the wilderness, another adventurer mused. If he's not dead, he's probably starving, or injured, or both. "I almost feel bad for being so angry at him," someone else admitted. "I mean, he didn't mean to make us itch. He's just incompetent." "Catastrophically incompetent," another corrected. "But yeah, not malicious." A strange thing happened in the guild that day. People began to forgive Benny. Not completely. There would still be jokes, still be teasing, still be wariness about anything he tried to cook or make, but the raw anger faded. Some even felt guilty. They'd been so harsh on him, driven him out of town essentially, and now he was lost somewhere, probably cold and hungry and scared, unaware that Benny was actually having the time of his life. Benny found the crossroads on his second day out from Lionholm. This time he knew which way to go, right toward the east. The road was more familiar now. He recognized landmarks from his journey to Venamar, a distinctive rock formation, a stream with a stone bridge, a farmhouse with a red roof. He was going the right way. That afternoon, while hunting for rabbits in the forest near the road, Benny heard something that made him freeze. Horses, lots of horses, and the jingle of armor. He crouched behind a bush, his half-skinned rabbit forgotten, and peered through the leaves. A procession of knights rode past, easily 300 of them, all in matching armor with royal insignias. They were riding hard, heading west, their faces grim and determined. Benny held his breath, not moving a muscle. Something about the way they were riding, the intensity in their posture, suggested they were looking for something. Or someone. The procession thundered past, not even glancing toward the forest. When they were gone, Benny let out a shaky breath. That was close. Whatever they're looking for, I don't want any part of it. Last thing I need is to get caught up in some royal business. He finished dressing his rabbit quickly, packed up his gear, and decided to camp deep in the forest that night, away from the road, just in case. As the sun set, Benny sat by his campfire, roasting the rabbit and congratulating himself on his cleverness. Tomorrow he'd reach Mundell. Tomorrow he'd be home. Should be there by late afternoon, he said to himself, turning the spit. Wonder if people are still mad about the soap. It's been 3 weeks. That's plenty of time to get over some itching, right? They've probably forgiven me by now. He had no idea that in Venamar, chaos still reigned. Princess Alara sat in her chambers, staring at her reflection in the mirror with a mixture of horror and rage. She was completely bald. Not a single hair remained on her head. Her scalp was shiny and smooth like a polished egg. And it itched. Oh, how it itched. Apparently, the balding dust didn't just remove hair. It triggered a regrowth cycle that started with intense itching. Her scalp felt like it was covered in invisible ants. "Your Highness," her handmaiden ventured carefully, "the physician says your hair should begin growing back within the week." "A week?" Alara shrieked. I have the summer ball in 3 days. I cannot attend looking like this. She gestured wildly at her bare head. The handmaiden wisely said nothing. Throughout Venomar, the situation was equally dire. Dozens of women who'd used the purple shampoo were completely bald. The social consequences were catastrophic. Lady Marjorie's fiancé had called off their engagement, claiming he couldn't marry a bald woman. She'd locked herself in her room and refused to come out. 3 other couples had broken up. 2 because the men couldn't handle their partners being bald. 1 because the woman was so devastated by her appearance she'd pushed her partner away. Several men were now crying themselves to sleep, heartbroken over lost relationships. They'd tried to apologize, tried to say they didn't care about the hair, but the damage was done. The women who'd lost hair were terrified to leave their homes. Some wore elaborate headscarves or wigs. Others simply refused to be seen in public. The social fabric of Venomar was fraying, all because of purple shampoo. And somewhere on the road to Mundell, the person responsible was sleeping peacefully under the stars, his belly full of roasted rabbit, dreaming pleasant dreams about finally getting home. Benny woke early the next morning, excited and nervous. Today was the day. He'd finally reach Mundell. He broke camp quickly, scattered the ashes of his fire, and set out at a brisk pace. The road was familiar now. He knew exactly where he was going. Around mid-morning, he passed a merchant heading the opposite direction. They exchanged nods and pleasantries. "Mundell's about 8 miles ahead," the merchant called out. "You should reach it by mid-afternoon." "Thank you," Benny called back, his heart lifting. 8 miles, a few hours of walking. He'd be home before dinner. The day was beautiful. Warm but not hot, with a pleasant breeze. Birds sang in the trees. The road was smooth and well-maintained. Everything felt right. Benny's thoughts turned to the guild. Would people be happy to see him? Probably not, given his track record. But maybe they'd at least be relieved he wasn't dead. He'd apologize again for the soap, promise to be more careful in the future. Maybe even offer to pay for healers to help with any lingering itching issues. Fresh start. That's what he needed. Come back, face the consequences, and move forward. He had money now. Real money. 7 gold coins gave him options. He could afford to stay at actual inns instead of the guild, could buy real food instead of choking down sad soup and disappointing sandwiches. Maybe he'd even find a teacher, someone who could help him understand his chaos magic properly, so he'd stop accidentally creating disasters. The future looked bright. Benny crested a hill and saw it in the distance. Mundell, the stone walls, the guard towers, the familiar skyline with the guild building visible among the other structures. Home. "I made it," Benny said softly. Then louder, "I made it!" He broke into a jog, then a run, his bag of holding bouncing against his side, his blonde hair streaming behind him. 4 hours later, dusty and tired but triumphant, Benny Bobo walked through the gates of Mundell and headed straight for the Adventurers Guild. He had no idea that in Venomar, a princess was scratching her bald head and swearing vengeance. He had no idea that royal knights were searching for him with execution in mind. He had no idea that his 3 weeks of peaceful wandering had been punctuated by multiple near misses with disaster. All he knew was that he was home, he was alive, and he'd managed to go almost a month without accidentally poisoning anyone. That had to be some kind of record. Benny pushed open the guild doors, ready to face whatever awaited him, completely unprepared for what would happen next. The Chaos Sorcerer Benny Bobo Chapter 9, The Reluctant Hero's Return. The guild hall fell silent the moment Benny walked through the door. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every card game froze. Every person in the room turned to stare at the blonde-haired teenager standing in the doorway, dusty from travel and grinning like an idiot. "Hi, everyone!" Benny called out cheerfully. "I'm back. Sorry I took so long. I got a little—" "Benny!" The shout came from at least a dozen voices simultaneously, but the emotion behind it wasn't what Benny expected. Instead of anger or accusation, there was relief. Sarah was the first to reach him, moving faster than Benny thought possible for someone her size. She grabbed him by the shoulders and looked him over with an intensity that was almost concerning. "You're alive," she said, then shook him slightly. "You absolute idiot. You're alive." Yeah," Benny said, confused. "Why wouldn't I be? You've been gone for a month Another adventurer, Marcus, the one who'd been one of the first soap victims, approached with what looked like genuine concern. "We thought you died, or got kidnapped, or fell into a ravine somewhere." "A month," Benny blinked. "It hasn't been... Oh yeah, I guess it has been about a month. I got lost, really lost. Ended up in a town called Lionholm, which is apparently in completely the wrong direction." "Lionholm?" Vera had appeared from behind her counter. "That's 150 miles from here, in the opposite direction from Venomar. How did you even—" She stopped herself and shook her head. "Never mind, of course you did. You're Benny Bobo." The name triggered a few chuckles, but they were fond rather than mocking. The atmosphere was strange, not hostile, not angry, but something else Benny couldn't quite identify. "Are you guys not mad at me?" he asked cautiously. "Oh, we're mad?" someone called out from the back. "You made us itch for a week. My balls still have scars," another voice added, prompting laughter. "But," Sarah said, and her expression softened, "you're just a kid. A stupid kid who keeps accidentally poisoning us, but you don't mean to do it. We were starting to realize that while you were gone." "We thought you might be dead," Marcus added. "Starving in a ditch somewhere, or eaten by monsters. Made us feel kind of bad for being so harsh on you." Benny felt something warm bloom in his chest. You were worried about me?" "Don't let it go to your head," Vera said dryly, but she was smiling. "You're still Benny Poo Poo, and you're still banned from the kitchen. But yes, we're glad you're not dead." "Though what the hell happened to your hair?" someone asked. "You go blonde while you were lost." Benny touched his hair self-consciously. "I made shampoo, used it to wash my hair. I think there was something in the mint leaves that bleached it." The room went very, very quiet. "You made shampoo," Vera repeated slowly. "Yeah, it worked really well too. Made my hair super clean and soft. I even sold some in Venomar to a shopkeeper, made 7 gold coins." The silence intensified. Several people exchanged glances that Benny couldn't interpret. 7 gold, Sarah said, "for shampoo that you made." "Yeah, I made 3 kinds. Mint, which I used, plain unscented, and this really pretty purple one with shimmer dust that smelled amazing. The purple one sold out first, apparently. Everyone loved—" "Benny," Vera interrupted, her voice very calm and very controlled. "What exactly did you put in the purple shampoo?" "Just oils, some thickening stuff, and this purple shimmer powder I bought at the market. The merchant said it was used for cooking and other things." "Why? What's wrong?" The entire guild seemed to be holding its breath. Then someone started laughing. Not cruel laughter, the kind of helpless, desperate laughter of someone who's heard something so ridiculous they can't process it any other way. "He doesn't know," the person gasped between laughs. "He has no idea." "Know what?" Benny asked, now genuinely worried. "What happened? Is someone sick? Did the shampoo— Oh God, did I poison people in Venomar too?" "Worse," Vera said, and now she was rubbing her temples like she had a massive headache. "Benny, there are 300 royal knights looking for you. The princess of the northern province used your shampoo and went completely bald. So did dozens of other women. Relationships ended. Engagements were called off. You've created a social crisis." Benny's face went white. "The purple shampoo made people bald?" "Spectacularly bald," Sarah confirmed. "The guards came through here a week ago with your description asking if we'd seen you. The guild told them to bugger off without a proper warrant. But Benny, they're talking about execution." "Execution!" Benny's voice cracked. "But I didn't mean to. I didn't know. The merchant said—" "What exactly did the merchant say?" Vera asked. "I pointed the purple shimmer dust and asked what it was used for, and he said many things, including cooking. So I bought it." "Let me guess," Vera said tiredly. "You were pointing at one thing that, and he thought you were pointing at something else." That's possible," Benny admitted. "I was kind of in a hurry, and he was helping another customer." "So you accidentally bought something that removes hair," Marcus said. "Used it to make shampoo, sold it to innocent people, made a princess bald, and now you're wanted for what amounts to assault on nobility." "This is bad," Benny whispered. "This is really, really bad." "Understatement of the year," someone muttered. Vera was already moving, pulling out ledgers and papers. "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Benny, you cannot go back to Venomar. Not now, probably not ever. The guild will protect you. We don't hand over members to nobility without proper legal proceedings, and even then we fight it. But you need to lie low." I should just turn myself in, Benny said miserably. Explain it was an accident, apologize, maybe offer to pay for wigs or... They will execute you before you finish your apology, Sarah said bluntly. Nobility doesn't care about accidents when it comes to their dignity. A bald princess is a national embarrassment. They need someone to blame, and you're it. But I have money. 7 gold. I could pay compensation. 7 gold wouldn't cover a fraction of the social damage you've caused, Vera said. No, you need to disappear for a while, take quests in other regions, build up your rank. Maybe in a year or 2, when the princess's hair grows back and the scandal dies down, we can negotiate something. Benny slumped into a chair, his head in his hands. I didn't mean to. I never mean to. Why does everything I touch turn into a disaster? Because you're cursed, someone said, not unkindly. Or blessed, depending on how you look at it. Chaos magic, right? Maybe this is just what you do. I don't want to do this. I want to make things that help people, not make them bald. Well, the mint and plain shampoo were apparently fine, Vera pointed out. It was only the purple stuff that caused problems. So you can make things successfully, you just need to actually verify what you're putting in them before you use them. I thought I did verify. I asked what it was. And got the wrong answer because of miscommunication, Sarah said. Look, kid, here's some advice. From now on, before you make anything, bring the ingredients to the guild. Have someone who actually knows alchemy and herbology check them. We have people who can identify this stuff properly. I should have done that from the start, Benny said miserably. Yes, you should have, but you didn't, and now we're here. Vera pulled out a map. I'm going to recommend some quests in the Western Territories, far from Venomar, far from any royal processions. You can work there for a few months, rank up, and maybe, by the time you come back, this will have blown over. What if it doesn't blow over? Then you might need to change your name and move to a different kingdom, Vera said frankly. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Benny looked around the guild. Despite everything, despite the poisonings, the injuries, the chaos he'd caused, these people were trying to help him. They were protecting him, advising him, treating him like family. Thank you, he said quietly. All of you. I know I'm a disaster. I know I keep screwing up, but thank you for not throwing me to the wolves. You're our disaster, Marcus said with a grin. Guild takes care of its own, even the catastrophically incompetent ones. Besides, Sarah added, life was boring before you showed up. Between the ball incidents, the puke cookies, the itch soap, and now the bald princess, you've given us months of entertainment. The least we can do is keep you alive. Gee, thanks, Benny said, but he was smiling. Vera spread the map on a table. Okay, everyone out. Benny and I need to plan his immediate future, and that means figuring out where he can go that won't get him arrested, executed, or accidentally poison an entire province. The other adventurers dispersed, though many gave Benny encouraging pats on the shoulder or words of support as they left. When it was just Vera and Benny at the table, she fixed him with a serious look. This is important, Benny. I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there anything else you've done recently that might come back to bite us? Any other products you've sold? Any other disasters waiting to happen? Benny thought hard. I left some shampoo at the Venomar Guild. Free samples, 3 bottles. What kind? 1 of each, purple, mint, and plain. Vera made a note. I'll send a message telling them to destroy the purple one before anyone else uses it. What else? I made soap earlier, left it at our guild here. Some of it had itching seeds in it. We know. We dealt with that. Next. I made cookies with what I thought was chocolate but turned out to be vomit berries. Also aware. Next. I made soup with laxatives and constipation medicine at the same time. That was a month ago. We're past it. Anything recent? Benny racked his brain. No. I've just been walking and hunting for the past few weeks. Oh, and I stayed one night in Lionholm, but I only did delivery quests there, just carrying messages around town. Nothing that could go wrong. Famous last words? Vera muttered, but she seemed satisfied. Okay, here's the plan. You're going to take a series of quests that keep you moving. Never stay in one place long enough for the royal guards to catch up. Stick to F and E rank quests. Simple stuff, low profile. Don't make anything. Don't cook anything. Don't create any products of any kind. Just do your quests, collect your pay, and survive until this blows over. How long will that take? Months. Maybe a year. The princess's hair will grow back. They said there was intense itching associated with the balding, which means the follicles are stimulated and active. She'll probably have a full head of hair again in 6 months. Once that happens and the social crisis settles, we can start negotiating amnesty. A year, Benny repeated. A year of running and hiding. A year of surviving, Vera corrected. Look at it as an adventure. You'll see new places, meet new people. Rank up your guild status. By the time you come back, you'll be a more experienced adventurer and hopefully, a bit wiser about ingredients. I'll try, Benny promised. No more making things without checking with an expert first. Good. Now let's look at these quests. They spent the next hour planning Benny's route. A delivery quest to a mining town in the mountains. An escort mission for a merchant caravan heading to the coast. A monster extermination quest in the southern swamps. Low-level monsters, nothing Benny couldn't handle with his chaos magic. Each quest would take him farther from Venomar, farther from the Royal Knights, farther from the consequences of his well-intentioned disasters. When they were finished, Benny had a route that would keep him traveling for at least 6 months, maybe more if he took his time. One more thing, Vera said. Your blonde hair makes you stand out now. The guards are looking for a blonde teenager. You might want to consider dyeing it back to brown or shaving it off entirely. No! Benny touched his hair protectively. I've already made enough people bald. I'm not making myself bald too. Besides, I kind of like it. Makes me feel like a different person. It makes you memorable, Vera warned. But it's your choice. Just be careful. Benny nodded and stood up. I should probably leave soon, right? Before the guards come back? Tomorrow morning would be best. Get a good night's sleep in an actual bed, stock up on supplies, and head out at first light. I'll process your first quest tonight, the delivery to Iron Peak. It's a week's journey north. Should be safe. Thank you, Vera. Really. For everything. She smiled and it softened her usually stern features. You're a good kid, Benny. Catastrophically unlucky and dangerously ignorant about basic ingredients, but good-hearted. Try to keep yourself alive, okay? I'll do my best. Benny left the guild and headed for the inn he'd been thinking about, the Golden Griffin, a nice establishment he'd passed several times but never been able to afford. Now, with his 7 gold coins, he could actually stay somewhere decent. The room was beautiful, a real bed with a thick mattress. Clean sheets that smelled like lavender, real lavender, not itching seed-contaminated lavender. A window with actual glass and curtains. A small table and chair, even a wash basin with fresh water. Benny collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling. 1 month. In 1 month, he'd completed a quest successfully, gotten lost for 2 weeks, accidentally made a princess bald, earned 7 gold coins, nearly been arrested multiple times without knowing it, and returned home to find people actually cared about him. This world is insane, he said to the ceiling. Absolutely insane. And I'm the most insane thing in it. But despite everything, despite the disasters, the close calls, the looming threat of execution, Benny found himself smiling. He was alive. He had friends, sort of. He had money. He had a plan. And tomorrow, he'd start a new adventure. Somewhere in the distance, a princess scratched her itching bald scalp and swore vengeance. Somewhere closer, the guild members laughed and shared stories about Benny's latest disaster. And in his comfortable bed at the Golden Griffin, Benny Bobo, chaos sorcerer, accidental criminal, and walking disaster, fell asleep with a smile on his face. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight he was home, and that was enough. The Chaos Sorcerer Benny Bobo Chapter 10, Captured and Condemned. Benny woke at dawn in his comfortable bed at the Golden Griffin, stretching luxuriously and feeling more rested than he had in weeks. Today was the start of his journey north to Iron Peak, a simple delivery quest that would take him far from Venomar and the Royal Knights hunting him. He dressed quickly in his travel clothes, packed his bag of holding with supplies, and headed down to the inn's dining room for breakfast. The meal was excellent. Fresh bread with butter and jam, scrambled eggs, sausages that actually tasted like meat instead of mystery, and hot tea that warmed him from the inside out. After settling his bill, Benny made his way to the market district. He needed a few more supplies for the journey: dried meat, hard cheese that wouldn't spoil, a new water skin since his old one had sprung a leak. He also bought a warm cloak, reasoning that the mountains would be cold even in summer. The marketplace was just beginning to wake up, vendors setting up their stalls and arranging their wares. Benny haggled cheerfully, paid fair prices, and felt genuinely optimistic about his future for the first time since arriving in this world. With his supplies secured and the morning sun climbing higher, Benny made his way toward the north gate. The quest letter was safely tucked in his bag of holding. His coin purse was pleasantly heavy with his remaining gold, and his spirits were high. He passed through the market square, waved goodbye to a few merchants who'd gotten to know him over the past month, and headed down the main street toward the gate. The guards at the gate knew him by now. He'd been in and out several times. They'd probably just wave him through with a friendly Benny stopped dead in his tracks. The street ahead was blocked by 300 knights in full armor, with the royal insignia of the northern province emblazoned on their surcoats. They were assembled in perfect formation, clearly preparing to enter the city. At their head was Captain Aldrich, the same grim-faced commander who'd been hunting Benny for weeks. And Benny had just walked directly into the middle of them. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Benny stood frozen, his eyes wide, his brain screaming at him to run. The knight stared at him, a blonde teenager with a bag of holding and a look of absolute terror on his face. Then Captain Aldrich's eyes narrowed. "You! Blonde hair! Stop right there!" Benny ran. He spun on his heel and bolted back the way he'd come, his bag of holding bouncing against his side. Behind him, he heard the thunder of armored boots and shouted commands. "Stop him! Don't let him escape! That's the one who made the princess bald!" Benny's mind raced. He couldn't outrun 300 knights, couldn't fight them, couldn't hide. They'd search every building in the city. He needed something, anything. His chaos magic. He could summon something. "Could I have a way to escape?" Benny shouted desperately as he ran. The air shimmered with that familiar tingle of magic responding to his request. But this time it was different, more powerful, more focused. The magic was interpreting his desperate need for escape in the most literal way possible. Light exploded beside him, coalescing into a massive form. An eagle materialized, but not a normal eagle. This was a giant eagle, easily 6 feet tall with a wingspan of 12 feet. Its feathers gleamed gold and bronze in the morning light. Its eyes were intelligent and fierce, and it screeched with a voice like thunder. "Oh my God," Benny screamed, but he didn't have time to be amazed. The eagle lowered itself slightly and Benny understood. It was offering him a ride. He scrambled onto the eagle's back, grabbing fistfuls of feathers and desperately hoping this would work. The knights were getting closer, their weapons drawn, their shouts growing louder. "Fly!" Benny shouted. "Please fly! Get me out of here!" The eagle launched itself into the air with powerful beats of its massive wings. The ground fell away beneath them. Wind rushed past Benny's face. He clung to the eagle's neck, barely believing this was happening. They rose higher. 10 feet, how 20 feet, 30 feet. The knights below looked up in shock and fury. Benny felt a surge of triumphant relief. He'd done it! He'd escaped! Then he heard the distinctive click of a crossbow being cocked. "Shoot it down!" Captain Aldrich roared. A knight raised a heavy crossbow, the kind designed for piercing armor. He aimed carefully, tracking the eagle's flight. No, Benny started. Thwack! The bolt hit the eagle's right wing, punching through magical feathers and disrupting the spell that held the creature together. The eagle screeched in pain, or maybe alarm, as its wing faltered. They began to fall. Not a gentle descent, a catastrophic, tumbling, spiraling fall from 30 feet in the air. Benny screamed the entire way down. They hit the ground hard. Benny rolled, the impact driving the air from his lungs. The eagle dissolved around him in a shower of light particles, disappearing like fireflies at dawn. Benny tried to get up, tried to run, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. Everything hurt. The world was spinning. Armored hands grabbed him before he could even make it to his knees. 2 knights hauled him upright, their grips iron hard on his arms. "Got him!" one shouted. "Bring the shackles!" Benny struggled weakly, but it was pointless. Within seconds, cold iron manacles were clamped around his wrists and ankles. The metal felt heavy, oppressive, and somehow wrong, like it was suppressing something inside him. "Magic-dampening shackles," Captain Aldrich said, approaching with satisfaction written across his scarred face. "Can't have you summoning any more creatures, can we?" Please, Benny gasped, still trying to catch his breath. Please, I didn't mean to. It was an accident. Save it for the princess, Aldrich growled. He gestured to his men. Bring the cage. They brought a cage, an actual iron cage on wheels, like something used to transport dangerous animals. It was barely large enough for Benny to sit in, with bars so close together he couldn't squeeze through them even if he weren't shackled. The knights shoved him inside and locked the door with a heavy padlock. Benny grabbed the bars, panic rising in his chest. Wait, please, I can explain! It was all a misunderstanding. You can explain to Her Highness, Aldrich said coldly. She's very eager to meet the boy who made her bald. From the buildings around them, people were emerging to watch. Benny saw guild members in the crowd, Sarah, Marcus, Vera. Their faces were shocked, horrified. Vera was already pushing through the crowd, her guild administrator's badge held high. By what authority are you arresting this adventurer? She demanded. He's under guild protection. You can't just... We have a royal warrant, Aldrich said, pulling out an official-looking document with multiple seals and signatures. Signed by the king himself, the boy is charged with assault on nobility, creation and distribution of harmful alchemical substances, and crimes against the dignity of the royal family. The Adventurers Guild's protection does not extend to crimes of this magnitude. Vera read the warrant, her face going pale. She looked at Benny, and he saw helplessness in her eyes. There was nothing she could do, nothing anyone could do. I'm sorry, kid, she said quietly. It was an accident, Benny shouted, his voice breaking. I didn't know the powder would make people bald. I thought it was for scenting. I never wanted to hurt anyone. But the knights weren't listening. The cage began to move, pulled by 2 horses. Benny clutched the bars, watching as Mundell, his home for the past month, the place where people had started to care about him, slowly receded into the distance. The guild members watched in silence as Benny Bobo, the chaos sorcerer, was led out of town in chains, heading back toward Venimar and certain doom. The journey back to Venimar took a week. It was the longest, most miserable week of Benny's life, and that was counting the week he died choking on a donut. The cage was uncomfortable, barely large enough to stretch out in. The knights fed him. They weren't cruel enough to let him starve, but the food was basic travel rations. Hard bread, dried meat, water. Nothing compared to the meals he'd been enjoying in Mundell. At night, they didn't even take him out of the cage. He slept curled up on the hard metal floor, covered by a thin blanket one of the less hostile knights had provided. But worse than the physical discomfort was the fear. Benny had plenty of time to think during that week. Time to imagine what the princess would do to him. Execution seemed likely, maybe beheading or hanging or some medieval torture method he didn't want to think about. He'd made a princess bald. That had to be a capital offense. The knights wouldn't tell him anything. When he tried to ask about his fate, they ignored him. Captain Aldrich seemed to take particular pleasure in Benny's misery, occasionally commenting about how the princess's wrath was legendary, how she'd once had a man thrown from the castle walls for insulting her dress. Benny spent a lot of time thinking about his 2 lives. Sam Winters, who died choking on a donut at 27. Benny Bobo, who was going to die at 15, technically 27, but who was counting? For accidentally making people bald. At least the second death is more interesting, he muttered to himself on the 5th day. Executed for alchemical crimes against royalty. That's got a ring to it. Better than choked on a donut. On the 7th day, they arrived in Venimar. The city looked the same as when Benny had left it. Bustling market, impressive buildings, well-maintained streets. But now it felt menacing, like the entire place was conspiring against him. The procession made its way directly to the royal guest quarters, a large mansion near the center of the city where Princess Alara was staying during her travels. Benny was pulled from the cage, still in shackles, and marched up the steps into a grand hall. And there she was, Princess Alara. She sat on a raised chair, not quite a throne but close, flanked by advisors and guards. She wore an elaborate dress of deep purple and gold, with jewelry that probably cost more than everything Benny had ever owned combined. And she was completely, utterly, spectacularly bald. Her head was smooth and shiny, without a single hair. It almost looked polished. But Benny could see the redness on her scalp, irritation from constant scratching. the itching he'd unwittingly inflicted on her. Next to her sat a man who could only be her father, older with a crown on his head, radiating authority and barely controlled rage. Benny was forced to his knees in front of them. "So," the king said, his voice like gravel and thunder, "this is the peasant who assaulted my daughter. Your Majesty, I didn't assault anyone," Benny protested. "I made shampoo. I thought it would help people. I had no idea the powder would—" "Silence!" The king's shout echoed through the hall. "You will speak when spoken to." Benny's mouth snapped shut. The king turned to his advisors. "The sentence for crimes against the royal family is death. I say we execute him immediately. Set an example. Show that no one treats the royal family with such disrespect." "Father," Princess Elara said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken. Her voice was calm, controlled, but Benny could hear the steel underneath. "I would like to question him first." "There's nothing to question. The evidence is clear. He made the poison that did this to you." "Nevertheless." Elara stood and descended from her seat, approaching Benny. Up close, he could see that she was probably only a few years older than he appeared, maybe 18 or 19, pretty, even without hair, with sharp green eyes that studied him intensely. "Did you plan this?" she asked. "Did you deliberately create a substance to remove hair, to humiliate nobility, to strike at the royal family?" "No." Benny looked up at her, and the sincerity in his eyes was impossible to fake. "I swear on everything, I had no idea it would do that. I'm from very far away. I don't know the plants and powders in this region. I thought I was buying scent powder. I just wanted to make something that would help people smell good and feel clean. I never wanted to hurt anyone." Elara studied him for a long moment. "You're telling the truth," she said finally. "You're just incompetent. Extremely incompetent." Benny agreed miserably. "I keep trying to help, and everything I make turns into a disaster. I poisoned my entire guild 3 times before this. I'm cursed or broken or something, but I'm not malicious. I promise." The princess reached up and touched her bare scalp, wincing slightly at the itching. "Can you get rid of the itching on my head?" Benny blinked. "Maybe. I might even be able to get the hair to grow back quicker if you allow me to try. I know things about hair growth from my world. I mean from where I come from, treatments, methods. If I could study proper alchemy, learn the right ingredients." "No." One of the advisors, an elderly man in elaborate robes, stepped forward. "Your Highness, you cannot trust this charlatan. Your hair will grow back on its own. It's already beginning. We can see the follicles recovering. Allowing him to touch your scalp again would be madness." "He's right," Elara said. But she was still looking at Benny with that intense, calculating gaze. She'd seen something in him, maybe his genuine remorse, maybe his obvious incompetence, maybe something else. And in that moment, studying the boy kneeling before her in shackles, Princess Elara made a decision that would change both their lives. "I've decided on a punishment," she announced. The hall fell silent. "Father, I know you want him executed, but I think that's too quick, too easy." She smiled slightly, and it wasn't a kind smile. "This boy has chaos magic, powerful, unpredictable magic that he clearly doesn't understand or control. He's dangerous because of his ignorance, not his malice." "So what do you propose?" the king asked. "He will attend the Royal Academy of Sorcery in the capital. He will study alchemy, herbology, spellcraft, and proper magical control. He will learn to be an actual sorcerer instead of some fake wannabe who totally messes up everything." Alara's smile widened. "And when he graduates, if he graduates, he will enter my service. He will work for me directly, using his abilities under proper supervision." Benny's eyes widened. That's not execution?" "Don't thank me yet," Elara said coldly. "Your life is going to get a lot harder before you actually have the right to thank me. The Royal Academy is not easy. The students are competitive and often cruel. You'll be entering as a commoner with a criminal record. They'll eat you alive. But if you survive, if you actually learn something, you might become useful." She turned to her father. "What say you, Your Majesty? Execution or education?" The king looked at Benny with disgust, but he also looked at his daughter with love. "If this is what you want, Elara, then so be it. But know this, boy," he pointed at Benny. "If you cause one more disaster while at the academy, if you harm one more person with your incompetence, the execution will proceed. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, Your Majesty," Benny said, hardly believing his luck. "School. He was being sentenced to school instead of death. He could work with that. He could definitely work with that. Good. Alara gestured to the guards. Get him cleaned up and get him proper clothes. I want him presentable. We leave at dawn for the capital. Halfway there, he will split off with a procession of 200 soldiers who will escort him to the academy. I won't have him traveling with me looking like a common criminal. Thank you, Benny breathed. Thank you so much. I told you not to thank me. Alara's eyes were hard. You think this is a kindness? The academy breaks students regularly. The coursework is brutal. The politics are deadly. The magical training can kill you if you're not careful, and you'll be doing it all under the shadow of being the boy who made a princess bald. Your life is going to be hell. She turned and walked back to her seat, her bald head held high with dignity. But, she added, almost as an afterthought, you are kind of cute. Try not to die before you become useful. Benny blushed despite everything. The princess thought he was cute. Granted, she'd also just sentenced him to magical school hell, but still, cute. That was something. The guards hauled him to his feet and led him away. Behind him, he heard the king and princess discussing logistics, travel arrangements, academy enrollment, security concerns. Benny was taken to a washroom where servants scrubbed him clean, trimmed his blonde hair into something presentable, and dressed him in proper traveling clothes. Not noble clothing, but quality stuff. A fitted tunic, sturdy pants, good boots, a warm cloak. He looked at himself in a mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Gone was the scrawny Walmart employee who'd choked on a donut. Gone was the disaster-prone adventurer in borrowed clothes. This person looked respectable, almost like someone who belonged in this world. That night, Benny slept in actual quarters, a small room with a real bed, under guard but not in a cage. Tomorrow, his journey to the Royal Academy would begin. As he lay in the darkness, Benny reflected on how his life had changed in just a few months. Death by donut, reincarnation, chaos magic, accidental poisonings, making a princess bald, and now mandatory magical education. At least it's not execution, he whispered to the ceiling. At least I get a chance. Somewhere in the mansion, Princess Alara scratched her itching scalp and wondered if she'd made the right decision. The boy was clearly a disaster waiting to happen, but there was something about him, some spark of genuine goodness buried under all that incompetence, that had stayed her father's hand. Time would tell if that spark could be forged into something useful, or if Benny Bobo would simply burn down the entire academy with his chaos magic. Either way, it would be interesting. The end of Book 1, and so ends the first volume of the Chaos Sorcerer Benny Bobo. From his death by donut to his sentence of magical education, Benny has survived disasters that would have killed lesser men multiple times over. But his greatest challenge lies ahead, the Royal Academy of Sorcery, where noble students, competitive academics, and deadly magical training await. What chaos will Benny unleash at the academy? Will he master his unpredictable magic, or will he accidentally poison the entire student body? Will Princess Alara's hair grow back, or will she remain bald and vengeful? And what other disasters await our hapless hero? Find out in Book 2, Blonde Benny Bobo Goes to School. Thank you for joining us on this chaotic journey. Please like and subscribe for more amazing stories of magical disasters, testicular trauma, and the misadventures of the world's most catastrophically incompetent sorcerer. Until next time, stay safe, verify your ingredients, and never, ever trust mysterious purple powders. Much love, and have a great day.